Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Kita bersiaran daripada Facebook, FB Live Fakulti Kejuruteraan UTM Johor Bahru. Pada hari ini kita akan bersama-sama dengan Cik Wan Mashitah, Wan Abdullah Sani, Managing Director dan juga CEO, Chief Executive Officer, Malaysia Marine and Heavy Engineering Sdn Bhd, dan mengalu-alukan kehadiran semua staf Fakulti Kejuruteraan dan juga warga UTM untuk sama-sama bersiaran, untuk sama-sama mendengar siaran langsung FB Live kita pada pagi ini. Okay, saya agak nervous sikit sebab first time nak FB Live. Alright. First of all, daripada Fakulti Kejuruteraan, stay at home, stay healthy. Kalau boleh sentiasa ada kat rumah sebab sekarang ni kita dalam PKP, tempoh PKP. Dan tanpa melengahkan masa, Muni dengan ini akan serahkan kepada Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dekan Fakulti Kejuruteraan, Yang Berbahagia, Yang Berusaha Profesor Datuk Engineer Dr. Muhammad Rafiq bin Haji Abdul Kadir, Dekan Fakulti Kejuruteraan, yang akan meneruskan agenda kita pada pagi ini. Dengan segala hormatnya dipersilakan.
Okay, terima kasih Murni. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To our honorable speaker and all of you joining us live from Facebook Faculty of Engineering, inside as well as outside UTM, local and abroad. Indeed, we are honored today to have someone with vast experience in industry as our speaker for the Captains of Industry webinar series. A brief introduction about our esteemed speaker today. Cik Wan Mashitah is an accountant by profession. She is a fellow of the Chartered Association of Certified Accountants, United Kingdom, and a member of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants. Prior to joining the MISC group, Cik Wan Mashitah was a professional accountant at Grant Thornton, Malaysia. She joined MISC Berhad in 2002 and had served in various capacities, including as the General Manager, Finance, before being seconded to Malaysia Marine and Heavy Engineering Sdn Bhd, and was subsequently appointed as Chief Financial Officer of MHB on 30th June 2010. Cik Wan Mashitah also took up the position as Acting Chief Executive Officer of MHB in May 2016 and assumed the position of Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer with effect from 1st January 2017. Without further ado, I call upon Cik Wan Mashitah to give her speech. Over to you, Cik Wan.
Okay. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. First of all, thank you Puan Murni and also Datuk Muhammad Rafiq for the introduction. My name is Wan Mashitah and I'm the Managing Director and CEO of Malaysia Marine and Heavy Engineering Holdings Berhad. Today I'm going to be sharing a bit in terms of the experience that our company has actually gone through on the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe some lesson learned that we can discuss further as far as going forward is concerned. I'm actually honored that I'm actually given the first session, although I was only informed of this later. But taking into account that I'm not even an engineer, but inshallah from the sharing that I will do, I hope that there will be some insights that I can give away and share, and then we can also work together going forward on how best to actually go through such an event should it come again. Na'uzubillah. Okay, first of all, just an introduction. I will be going through the pandemic impact on the business operations. And before I do that, I think I should be introducing the company that I'm working with. So can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, Malaysia Marine Heavy Engineering and Holdings Berhad, or it's called shortly as MHB, has been in operation since 1973. We have several locations, but our main location is actually in Johor itself at the Pasir Gudang industrial area. So with 40 years of experience that we have over the years, we have gained a lot of experience in, and we are catering for two major segments of business. One is the marine segment, and the other one is called the heavy engineering segment. So we provide solutions for our clients on a wide range of matters, very much involved with engineering works. For the marine segment, our main focus is actually to do repair and refurbishments of vessels, mainly big vessels that carry crude, LNG and whatnot. And we also do refurbishments of specialized structures offshore vessels, like floating productions and floating storage units, and also special works for some sort of specialized vessels. So we had once a missile launching vessel that came for a refurbishment in the yard some time ago. That is on the marine side, where our customers are mainly a mix of international and local. And on the heavy engineering side, we actually do a lot of construction for the offshore platforms that you see within Malaysia and outside. You can see some of the pictures here. These are the things that we have proudly built over the years, of 40 years experience that we have. We do from a small rig of 800 tons all the way to about 40,000 tons. So these are the things that we do in the yard, mainly a construction, but we are also doing a full EPCIC type of job, which is involving us to take responsibility for the engineering, the procurement, the construction of it in our yards, then the loading out of the structure and the installation at offshore, and then commissioning it for usage by the clients. So all in all, we have a big workforce, and most of our workforce are technical people. We do employ a lot of engineers, and Alhamdulillah, there's quite a number of graduates from UTM who's actually working with us. We are about 2,000 plus strong at this current moment. And we do have a lot of facilities that you have seen inside the pictures here. And if you have been to the yard, you will see how big it is. So it's one of the larger yards in Southeast Asia, and we do have a lot of facilities that we have to actually operate and use during our construction phase. So as you can see, for a company that has about 2,000 people, and then we do employ a lot of subcontractors that do work for us. So before the period of the MCO, we have about 6,000 people working in the yard. So you can imagine what was the impact when we had the MCO, where we have to actually look at how do we manage the business when the MCO was actually implemented. So one of the things that I would like to actually bring up is actually for us, because we come from a business that is actually very clear in our HSC, our health, safety and environmental policies, we do actually have a lot of procedures when it comes to the health and the safety of the workers at site. And what we have done is actually there's a lot of manuals and SOP already in place. So when this particular MCO was implemented, there was further implementation of more procedures and processes that we have to put in place. But I think the discipline of the people is there, that they understand why it's being actually put to them. So, and also the fact that in Pasir Gudang, if you remember last year, we do actually have some small incidents of events or crises that has happened, which has already brought us alert. And we were actually doing a lot of scenario plannings when that happened, and we continue to do that. So when the COVID pandemic was happening in China, there was already a lot of processes that we have to think of. What if it comes over to this side of the world? So that has helped us, because we do have a group that is more sensitive that this type of situation will have an impact to us if we do not monitor it from the front. So, so I will go on to the next slide now. So this is actually, I've taken this from, I think this is from McKinsey, but roughly most of the consultants will have some sort of phases when you talk about the pandemic and how do we get out from it. So this particular one has 5 stages. Some of them have 4 stages. So as you can see, you have resolve, resilience, return, reimagine, and reform. So like you see, there is a lot of steps before we can actually say that we are going to be able to actually go out of this COVID-19's pandemic issue. And today, we are only starting stage 3. So what I want to like to emphasize here is actually, it's still a long journey to go before we actually at reform. So when I was first approached by UTM was to talk about how do we actually move towards 5, and I said that we are still at 3, so we need to actually make sure we are strong at 3 before we actually move to 5. So we will touch a bit in terms of where do we imagine the future will be, but I think there's still a long way to go before we can go to reform, and it will actually require a lot of effort from everyone, inclusive of the learning institution, yeah. So today we have gone off from resolve, which is when it first started and what do we need to do. And then number 2 is the resilience that we have to do when during the MCO itself, with the staff, some of them working at home, and then some of our workers can come in. And now we are actually restarting. We have actually got the MITI approval somewhere around 16th of April to restart on 50%, and now we're gradually increasing. To date, in the yard, we have a number of people, but we are still not anywhere near 50% yet. So what are the steps that we have taken over the time to actually, bring ourselves to mitigate some of the impact that we can? Of course, I like to emphasize here that some business impacts cannot be mitigated because we are living in a very interconnected world. And there are some things that is beyond our control, like government policies and whatnot. So you have to be really aware of what is happening and really have to act and be ready to take certain actions when it comes. So these are some of the actions that we have actually put through. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these are the preparedness measures that we have put in place. So in fact, the group itself has actually put in quite a stringent measures way before the 18th of March MCO implementation. Starting from March, early March, we have already stopped the traveling of our personnel to other places. Except, of course, we still travel to Singapore because a lot of our business is actually connected with Singapore. And then we have actually introduced the thermal scanner, I think, way before the MCO was implemented. But these are some of the measures that we have actually put in place from that period when we knew that COVID was going to be something quite serious. And these are also things that we are still implementing in the yard today. So things like thermal scanning, things like we have cameras ready for people that comes in either through the workers that walked. And then we also have thermal scanners for the people in the cars. So everyone actually has to fill up certain forms to actually advise us 14 days before where they are. And then it's very regulated. We have people in staggered coming in the mornings and also during the lunches. And if there is anyone who's with a temperature that is above 37.5, they are actually redirected either to our in-house clinic. We have an in-house clinic, or they'll be sent back to home to actually be quarantined. All right. In between that, we also have a number of workers who are actually working from home. So there's a lot of communications that we have to have in place. So the company has actually also, I think was introduced by some of the staff that we actually have some SMS blasts because, when people go for holidays or they are at home, they don't really check their emails most of the time. So we had an email blast and also the SMS to actually advise them there is some new improvements or announcements that is being made by the company through the portal. So this is being done over the period. These are either company policies or government new regulations, or even the fact that we give some awareness tips of people working from home, and then how do you maintain your mental states and whatnot. So there's a lot of documentation and also communication packs that was actually being done so that people are aware that these are still they are still in a working environment to say. Okay, so we also provide the people who actually have to come to work. This is more from the 16th of April onwards. We do have social distancing, so the floors are actually full with tapes of 1 meter each, either at the entries and also at the canteens, and then they are coming in on locations and at staggered times, and also with resting and lunches at staggered time. There are a lot of things that needs to be looked into, and then we have actually taken the position of to be over prepared rather than under prepared. So instead of just waiting for the MOH to actually come up with the guidelines, there were certain things that has been put in place, like closing down the surau and certain things that will actually cause a lot of possibilities of infection, especially for high traffic areas. So this has actually been done. Of course, during this time, just to give you a feel of what was happening before the MCO implementation, we have about 5 to 6 projects that was ongoing in the yard of building offshore structures at various stages. Some of them are nearing completion and was supposed to go out during the MCO, which has now been deferred. At the same time, we also have a number of more than 10 vessels owning to some foreign ship owners, some local owners, and even the government that was in the yard and was undergoing repairs and refurbishment. So you can imagine these people were, all these clients will be very worried about their jobs. How is their project supposed to be finished? And what is the impact to their next assignment or their next work? And on top of that, for the vessels, we actually have the crew who is actually on board, some of them. So there's a lot of communications between us and the client, either in the forms of documentation and also in the form of discussions, a lot of meetings online, basically to find a solution that is best for the companies on how to go forward. There is some things that are within our own restriction or that we have put in place. There are also some things that we cannot control, which is coming from the government or even from the global position of COVID-19 pandemic itself. Because one of the things that we do is a lot of items and people, resources do come from overseas. And because of the border control, they are not allowed to actually come in, either the materials, and we cannot actually do any work unless we have all these things in place. So these are the few variables that we have to deal with, and then we have to deal with through either contractually and also through mutual understanding of the situation. Then we also, like I said, before this happened, last year, I think in Pasir Gudang, there was the case of the contamination of Sungai Kim Kim and also the noxious gas incident that was happening. So during that time, we already have a business continuity plan, but I would say that the business continuity plan, which is usually something that a risk mitigation exercise that is being done by companies, they are very much superficial, or I would say very what is the word? This is very, very much a paper exercise. So because you don't really know until you actually go through the situation. So in the case of the Sungai Kim Kim, we had a business continuity plan which says that if there is any issues in terms of risk at our yard, we need to actually move some of our critical operations to a different location. And the location that was actually chosen was actually at our Center of Excellence, which is about 5 kilometers away, or alternatively, it was at the Stadium Pasir Gudang. But what has happened during that time is that basically our Center of Excellence center is actually much nearer to the contamination area, so it doesn't actually work. And then the stadium of MPPG was actually used as the center by the KKM at that moment. So it was not also feasible. So it shows that a business continuity plan has to be actually very much catered to each and every incident, and it has to be updated and monitored all the time. So from that incident, we have actually been working very hard on our BCP. And Alhamdulillah, for this particular one, we have been monitoring since January and February, and we have managed to actually have a very much a live document for the BCP. I believe this is something that also has helped us to actually be ready when the MCO was actually implemented on what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Okay, so that's on this particular slide. Can we move to the next one? Okay, so this particular one is basically a bit of the reimagine or the reform that I see, or some of the lessons learned that we have seen in MHB. So one is the working from home. So, you know, a lot of companies, they feel that, you know, staff, when they work at home, are they really working and whatnot? So the situation was never, you know, something that you actually take it seriously. In fact, even in our business continuity plan, being a yard as us, you know, we always say that we need the people to be at site. But because of circumstances, we have to actually pull some of our people, and most of our people have to work from home at that point in time. And we do see that it has been quite a success. The key in terms of working from home is that there has to be very clear KPIs, key productive indicators for the people, to make sure that they actually do what they're supposed to do and treat that the time that they spend at home is actually working. And then there has to be regular monitoring and communications with the superior. Of course, we do have a number of people who is actually not actually having the work, because these are people who need to be at site, people such as the project managers and whatnot. But we have found good use of them. During this time, they were tasked to actually review the SOPs, the procedures that we have, put out some improvements that we can do. And then one big group of them were actually, I think they were doing the user acceptance testing for a system that we're actually trying to implement in the yard. So time was actually productively used, and it gives you a glimpse of what the world of working can be. If you don't have to be in the office, there can still be work done. We need to actually be able to monitor and actually see. And this is very much linked to the digital tools that we have. Alhamdulillah, for the company, we are actually quite blessed because we have done most of our, you know, revamping of our system. Most of our storage are already on cloud-based, and we have got the necessary facilities that we have today. So, and this, I think, plays a part when it comes to working from home, because you need to actually be in constant communication with the staff, and without the digital tools like these online meetings, then it's very difficult. Of course, it also depends on internet, you know, the stability of the internet and whatnot. But we do not see that much of reasons that this cannot work. And going forward, I think there will be lesser meetings that need to be done, where people have to be always face-to-face unless it's critical, especially since the forecast for pandemic COVID-19 may even go all the way up to 1 to 2 years, unless there is a vaccine and the herd immunity is already in place. So I think this is the way forward, and I think companies need to actually look into investing into this. One of the case that I can actually give an example is that, you know, like engineering documents, because we do a lot of engineerings for the structures. And when we're doing procurement, we have to look at the engineering drawings. So if this has been in a land-based server, we will probably have a problem, because these documents cannot be moved. But because we are already on cloud-based, certain live documents were able to be moved, and the people can actually do their job at home. So this, to me, I put it a yellow because, you know, it can work for you and it cannot work for you. For me, it cannot work for me because to a certain extent is because I feel that working from home, you tend to work a lot more than when you work at office, because it doesn't stop. It seems to be 24/7. Okay, supply chain is a very major concern when it comes to COVID pandemic impact to us. When I talk about supply chain, we are talking about materials and equipments. We are talking about labor resources and logistics. It's a whole range of things, because the world has become so interconnected, and it's all about the economic base of open market. We source our items from all over the world. And then, you know, when the whole world is actually through this pandemic, and we don't know which country is going to be on lockdown, what are the restrictions in each country, this has become quite a main concern for us, and a lot of time is actually being put to actually look into this. And this is where I think that we strategically as a country, we need to actually try moving this a bit further on how can Malaysia be less dependent on certain things from the outside world, and we have the own industry within Malaysia. Maybe it's something that also UTM, can work with the private companies on how best to go forward. Just a case of example, we had something that was supposed to be sourced from China. And then when Chinese officials actually had a lockdown on China, so we were looking for alternatives, and our alternatives happens to be in the Europe side. And then right before we start negotiating on the Europe side, then Europe starts closing. And then, we already have to now return back to China, and now China is back doing the items that we need. So because the whole world is actually interconnected, and most of the supplies that we need is actually coming from this type of places. Structure needs around 1,000 or millions of valves. That I think with the technology that we have, we probably will be able to actually set up some industry that it can actually cater for some of our oil and gas requirements. Logistic wise, we always put in as a strength for us that we are very near to Singapore. So transit airport of Singapore is big in Changi. So our specialists and our experts can actually come in very fast into Johor and be able to do work. But because of the lockdown that happened in Singapore, a lot of our work cannot be done because they have either to fly into Malaysia and be quarantined for 14 days, or we have to wait until the lockdown is actually lifted. So these are the things that I think there is a big concern when it comes to such a big world scale crisis. I spoke a bit on the BCP, the Business Continuity Plan. I think that this is a very good idea, and I think that it doesn't have to be confined to just business. I think even organization and even your personal life, you can have something like a continuity plan. It's best to actually be having a plan on before you get into trouble. So sometimes we say, like in Malay, we say kena tinggalkan wasiat. People don't want to talk about death, but I think talking about death is sometimes a good thing, because then you plan for the loved ones on what will happen to them. So I think this is something that should be actually applied to everyone. And then the fifth one is actually the new norms. And I think this one will be there to stay, and we have not seen the last of it. The new norms basically is how do you start working in terms of with the social distancing. Is there a different way for us to do work where people are confined in a very tight spaces when we're doing our structures? At one time we even have few thousand people in one four-story structures. So these are the things that we need to actually work. How do you make sure that hygiene is of the utmost priority, and how do we manage the foreign laborers that we have, the conditions of living that they have, and even talking about social distancing, even in the office layout itself, is it conducive the way that we are doing now, or with working at home, can there be a different way of doing work now going forward? So these are the few things that I think that we have to spend a bit more time looking at how we can actually do differently when it comes to future positions, or so that we don't get hit in that badly when it comes. So with that, that I will end my presentation or my sharing, but I will be open for any questions if there's anything that is required for me to further clarify.
Okay, terima kasih Yang Berusaha Cik Wan Mashitah. Thank you for your time with us. Okay, I ada dapat satu. Okay, from the questions, from the comments. So we have a questions. Did MMHE revise their contracts with current clients because of the MCO? Are there time extensions or exclusion of penalty for late completed projects?
Okay. Most of our contracts with the clients do have certain clauses when it comes to disruption of work, whether it's within our control or not our control. So we are actually exercising those clauses when we discuss with our clients. Of course, there's a lot of discussion going forward with the clients, especially if there is a counterparty positions on the other side. All in all, I think the response from the client has been quite positive. Everybody quite understand what is the situation. And it's not that, it's something that is actually at the fault of the company that, we decided that we to have COVID. It's actually a pandemic that is worldwide. So I think so far our client has been very, very supportive, and we are all working together on how best to actually move forward. So we have this question is, what are the resources, constraint, challenges that you're facing with the COVID-19 crisis? Okay, the resource, like I said, some of them are actually material that's supposed to arrive, but because of the constraint on either the port that is sending or the factory that is producing it, there will be schedule delays and also time delays either from the traveling itself and getting through the customs, and even the logistic itself. As you know, there's only movements of restricted items that can go from the ports to the individual places. So far, and that's on the materials and the equipments. On the resources, basically, because of the MCOs, some of our contractors that we actually employ, they are not able to actually move their workers. Either it's because of cross-border, and also sometimes because the experts are actually coming from overseas. So these are the ones that we have been facing. As far as our own staff is concerned, we didn't have much of an issue. Most of them are contactable and they are able to actually do their job from wherever that they are. Intern students, if I'm not mistaken, I think they have been, they've been asked to go back, because basically there's not actually any work in the office that they can do, and interns has to be supervised, and everybody is actually staying in their own homes. And I believe that when the MCO is lifted, there will be some arrangements that we have to do with the universities on how to continue with their internship. Yes, it is very, very difficult. The question is, I just wonder how you maintain the supply chain. As I said just now, the supply chain is very much a concern for us, because even if the lockdown has actually been lifted, there is in Malaysia, you still have other countries that we are actually sourcing our items that may or still be in lockdown. And even if they are not in lockdown, they are still in certain restrictions that they cannot go through or they cannot do, so schedule has already been impacted. Definitely what we try to do is to find alternative sources which will be able to get us the materials as soon as possible, but certain things are actually beyond our control. So that is looked at, especially for the critical items. We will be working with the vendors and also the client on how best to do this. I think this particular question shouldn't be asked at this forum. This is on MHB, and we are talking about COVID at this moment. Currently, we are looking at how we want to adopt the particular working arrangements post-COVID. Today, our staff is actually working in groups of either working at home or another group is actually working in an office, but only the critical ones are in the office. Time to time, if the husband and wife are actually working, they need to actually advise the HR, and then it's all depending on how best the work arrangements can be done between the bosses and also with HR. I have not received any comments about whether we have an issue on that. Okay, I don't think being a lady CEO is any different from being a man CEO at this point in time. I think everybody as a leader at this point in time has the same challenges, and we all have to have a good team at our back to make sure that we have a success going out from this pandemic. How severe would the financial cost be to the company due to the lockdown? Very good question. We are still doing the maths at the moment. I think a lot of you read about the consultants writing down, there's a lot of, not just about the company, I'm talking about even the country. We are talking about, 5 to 20% in terms of reduction. Definitely for our marine side, we have already lost a certain period of time where we cannot fill up the dock because of the lockdown, and that will be just lost revenues. But at the same time, for the existing other jobs which we have in hand, we need to actually come up with a plan on how can we actually mitigate and reduce the loss, and also make sure that we try to catch up if we can. So eventually this position on restarting, which some consultants call it the fight phase. The fight phase is something that is going to be very long, and the fight will be very severe, because we're talking about how do you control something, although you are, let's say you're healthy, but the rest of the world is still sick, and they are not there for you to actually, leverage on or use. So that's how I see a pandemic is. So even if Malaysia is out of the MCO, we're talking about, we can start working, and let's say even if we are zero, we do have a lot of dependency on other countries and other resources that it comes from elsewhere. And that will actually also, have an impact on how do we start quickly and actually get over this. I think for this particular question, also relating to the depressed crude prices, what is the impact of the 18 months? I think we have actually looked at it. The current situation for the yard, alhamdulillah, we do have projects in the yard. At least for the near future, for the heavy engineering side, we do actually have work, and our people, our overheads can actually be deployed. But like I said, we have already lost certain revenues because of the COVID lockdown. More prospects of what is going to happen in the next 18 months, I think I would suggest that you go to our website and have a look at our booster announcement of the Q1. I think we have put a lengthy narrations on that. Okay, during the pandemic, yes, there's a lot of, most of the time people are working at home, but we also look at what is the society around us that we need to actually assist. As far as the group is concerned, we have done donation drives with our staff during the early parts of it, where we actually contributed to mostly to our daily workers in the yard. We have quite a lot, like I said, there's about 6,000 of people before we went into MCO, and about 2,000 is our people, but the rest of them are actually workers. So we actually looked at some of our workers, especially the daily workers, the tea ladies and whatnot, who will not be having any, income during the period, and we have actually contributed. We have also contributed to the hospitals for some PPEs and whatnot. So these are all done based on whatever that we can actually achieve during what they require. So we have been in contact with with Hospital Permai and also Hospital Sultan Ismail on if they need anything, and they actually know who to talk to in our corporate communication department. Some of them are actually true force majeure. I think they are, depending on the clauses of the contracts, we actually apply the clauses in the contracts that we have when it comes to the work being delayed due to COVID-19. Okay. Is it possible to modify the scope of work or project in order to cope with financial sustainability when the initial contract will come? I think this is where communications has to be open between the clients and also between the contractor. you need to see what is the best way to go forward, because at the end of the day, as a client, I would presume that you still want the product to go out, and it has to be going out at the same quality. There will be discussions in terms of how can we work better. Definitely, like for a company like us, a contractor, there is a lot of cash flows that we have to actually use. And this is where, some discussions with the client will be helpful. A lot of communications, basically. And I don't think that, if you modify or reduce the scope, definitely there will be a commercial impact that is required. And this all has to be agreed anyway with the clients and whatnot. So it's not really, a very clear cut. So you have to have lots of discussion. Okay, when it comes to benchmarking for the BCP, I mean, we are part of a bigger group, which is the MIC group and Petronas. So we do actually have a group policy when it comes to how to build up the BCP. We do not benchmark with other organizations, because I believe that certain organizations have their own unique requirements. When it comes to BCP, basically the standard procedures are all there. You make sure that your business continuity is there, that you have your critical positions of the people, you have the critical resources that you have to put in place in your assets. And then it's very much specific to whichever organization you are in. So we follow the same guidelines, but we have to actually cater it for our own business. Okay, good question here. What is the financial budget and credit control measures taken to cope with COVID challenges? I think this is one of the areas where it's a lesson learned. So I think going forward, possibly something that, like we have to really look at the customers that we take in, and even the vendors that we take in, and whether they are able to actually sustain should there be a crisis that is happening. And, people talk about what is the cash flow or working capital that you have during a time of crisis, or how long can the company go on without, having any business for, is it 2 months, 1 month, is it 6 months? So that will probably play into the criteria going forward on how do you assess who do you do business with, and either from the client side or even from the vendor and supplier side. Okay. So I think, is that all the questions that we have to date?
Okay.
I hope I've answered most of them.
Thank you berusaha Cik Wan. Okeylah Cik Wan, rasanya jam pun dah tunjukkan 10:43 minit pagi. So we are
Yes.
going to end our sessions. Kita tahulah kan, Cik Wan mesti have a lot of things to do today. Okay, Muni rasa, okay, setakat ini dulu kita tamatkan sesi soal jawab, question and answer session will be end by now. Okay, thank you for all for watching our first series from our webinar series whereby we invite industrial leader in Malaysia. So stay tuned with us this afternoon by 4 p.m. with Yang Berbahagia Datuk Karim. Okay. For now, terima kasih kepada semua warga UTM dan juga yang menonton sama-sama menonton FB Live. Bersama-sama sini Muni yang saya perasan, kita ada 347 orang yang telah menonton dan bersama-sama dengan kita pada pagi ini. Okay, tunggu siri kita orang yang seterusnya pada jam 4 petang hari ini, dan juga insya-Allah sepanjang Ramadan kita akan ada beberapa lagi siri dengan industry leader from all Malaysia. Okay, Datuk, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Muni serahkan pada Datuk untuk penutup. Terima kasih.
Serah pada saya. Okay.
Apa lagi ke?
I guess just thank you very much, Cik Wan, for sharing your experience as a leader, a lady CEO at MHB. I'm sure that you must be very busy now that MCO is lifted, and thank you also for your willingness to join Faculty of Engineering Captains of Industry. And thank you to all our viewers. I would like to ask all of you to join our next session, which will be on 4 p.m. today. And don't forget to like, apa lagi? Dia ada like, comment and share. Like, comment and share our Facebook because we have many more Captains of Industry CEOs during this webinar series in the month of Ramadan. So
Okay.
I guess that's all. Again, thank you so very much, Cik Wan.
I hope it's of some good sharing there, and definitely it's will be good to if UTM will also assist once we go into the reform and the reimagine session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you,
bye
thank you.
bye.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum. Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.